Good evening to the Good evening and welcome to the June committee meeting of the Penns Manor Area School District. I'll turn it over to our superintendent, Darren Johnson.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hardesty. If you want to take a look at your agenda for this evening, we can move right down to number 4, curriculum, because we have nothing under program presentations or negotiations this evening. So looking at the first item, 4A, you'll see listed IUP educator and clinician preparation field experience 5-year agreement. There's also an attachment to that. Simply in a nutshell, it's an agreement between us and IUP to allow pre-student teachers to come and have their experience here at the district along with student teaching. So it's just outlining responsibilities of all the parties involved. We've done it in the past and that has expired. So we're asking for your approval next week to approve that agreement for 5 years to allow pre-student teachers and student teachers from IUP to come and spend time with us. Questions on that? Next, 4B. Next week, we will ask you to approve a health and safety plan along with emergency instruction time template for section 520.1. Let me explain what that is. Most of you are familiar the fact that we had to have a health and safety plan approved for this past year in order for us to operate because of the COVID pandemic. So we're going to be required to do the same in order to receive ESSER funds. It's a requirement that we also have a health and safety plan. So you may be saying, well, Mr. Johnson, what's that going to look like for the fall? Well, all of you know as well as I do, things have changed over the course of the past year. I'm sure things are going to change from now till the beginning of the school year. But it is our intent. PDE is recommending to all school districts to open up 5 days a week in person next fall. So that will be our plan. There's other criteria that we have to put in our health and safety plan. A lot of what you will see, and I'll send it out to you because the templates have just been released. So when I get that together Monday, Tuesday at the latest, you will see that template completed. And what it's going to show, one, section 520, if you recall, you are giving the authority to myself to be able to, in identifying that we are in a state of emergency situation with the pandemic. PDE is indicating that we can use that section again for the upcoming school year. Is it our intent to have any abbreviated version? No, but we do want to have in our back pocket, so to speak, approval to go remote should we have to, if we encounter anything that we have in the past. As you all know, we were in person every single day of the school year. Again, that is our plan again for August to have everyone back and in person. However, within that plan, we're going to ask for you to consider to give the authority to follow the state's recommendation, and that is giving the superintendent, myself, the authority that if we need to close because we hit a certain situation next year, that we have many cases for some reason and need to go remote, we will do that. So the section 520 is simply me indicating to them what we will do during those remote days. So this is very similar to what I described to you as the FIDS, the flexible instruction days that we approved last month. However, this is a blanket, so to speak, over the entire year, should we deem that we need to. Also within that health and safety plan, just so that you know, I will keep it very general, meaning that we will follow when it comes to masking, we will follow at the point in time when we go to open school, whatever the recommendation is of CDC and the Pennsylvania Department of Health, things of that sort. When it comes to social distancing, whatever the criteria is at the time that we open school, it'll be indicated in our health and safety plan that we'll do that. But again, as you all hear in the news, June 28th is a date for everyone. And again, as long as we're progressing in the positive way, I would say that we're coming back with very little mitigation in place. But if we encounter things, we're going to make our plan flexible enough that we may, indicate to everyone that we must be masked or things of that sort. But we'll make that health and safety plan as flexible as we can to address any issues that we encounter through the course of the next school year. Any questions on that?
What about the cleaners? Are they done now?
Correct.
Okay.
So the cleaners, the motion was, and I'll explain that in a motion on down. If you recall, we had 2 cleaners. One cleaner actually transferred during the course of the year into a cafeteria monitor. And then I'm going to talk about the other one here shortly. Yep, but those 2 positions, yes, that was over the course of the year during the daytime. Yes, those have ended. Any other questions on what that plan will look like or the intention of having you approve the 520.1? Okay, if not, we'll move to 4C, approve submission of multi-tiered system of supports math grant. Mr. Grimaldi has submitted, and you can see that as attachments also, that we will submit application for another MTSS grant. In the past, it has addressed literacy. This year, coming up, it will address math. And Mr. Grimaldi, I don't know if there's anything that you want to add to that at all. Anything that you want to add?
Sure, Mr. Johnson, thank you. We've applied for and received several MTSS grants in the past, and as Mr. Johnson said, they're all based in literacy. We were fortunate enough to get an application in for math this year. The grants have always been worth $10,000 to the district, so we get funds to spend on improving what we do in math. We also get high quality training from Patton in Pittsburgh. They help us. Even last year during the COVID, we had support via Zoom from Patton Pittsburgh. We had consultants working with our teachers. We actually Zoomed into some of our classrooms and were able to share lessons and get feedback on our lessons for reading. So it's time for us to do math. So that is the goal for next year.
Mr. Grimaldi, do you want to just take a couple seconds too to thank the faculty for working in that direction and just highlight that we've also shown other districts what's happening?
Absolutely. Our faculty has done an excellent job, especially during the pandemic. As I said, they were open to me going into the classrooms with my Surface Pro, turning the camera on, and then having the consultant from Patton, Miss Jeannie Hertzler, view some lessons, give them feedback, high quality feedback on lessons, and they were very receptive to the feedback. And I think we've come a long way in literacy. We have all the pieces in place for literacy, and as I said before, now it's time to start working on math. The teachers have already done that. They did an end of the year summary. We were able to pay them after school to come in, after school was over, to come in, look at what they did in literacy, but also start looking at what we're doing in math and making adjustments to curriculum to get us ready for next year. So hats off to the teachers. They did a wonderful job this year. Appreciate everything they did.
Thank you, Mr. Grimaldi. Any questions on that item? Okay, move along to 4D, approved dual enrollment agreement with Mount Aloysius for next school year. That is an agreement that we have with Mount Aloysius for our students at the high school to receive dual enrollment. Probably the following month, we'll receive the one from Penn Highlands. And a combination of working with both of those, both Mount Aloysius and Penn Highlands, we do have the opportunity to provide an associate's degree through Penn Highlands. I just want to highlight that this past graduating class had 3 individuals who received their associate's degree at the same time as their high school diploma. So hats off to those individuals. So we'll ask you for that approval for next Thursday to approve Mount Aloysius agreement again for next school year.
So Mount Aloysius is part of the associate program.
So yes. So what happens is, in order to get the associate's degree, there's so many requirements of different courses that have to come in. There's so many, for example, students here at our school can only take so many of the dual enrollment courses and under our roof taught by our teachers. Then there's a number of courses that has to be taken either through Penn Highlands or through another institution. So Penn Highlands accepts Mount Aloysius college credits to pull in to have a combination to make that associate degree work.
Hey, Mr. Grimaldi, how your son did it take him 2 years to get through Juniata?
No, he graduated from Juniata in 3 years and was able to go into chiropractic school right after that. So it cut a whole year off of his education and saved me a bunch of money.
Yeah, $65 an hour. When, Katie?
Yes, yes. And so, yep. So Katie, also the same as Mr. Grimaldi's son, completed college in 3 years due to the fact that our teachers here were willing to work in cooperation with the two, meaning Mount Aloysius and Penn Highlands. And yeah, so she reaped the benefit, I guess, and so did I.
Yeah. How many have we had altogether? Off the top of your
I do not have that count. Total count, I'd have to calculate all the years.
head? Over 10.
Oh, far over 10. I would guess that we're probably in the high 20s, combination over the years of folks that left with their associate's degree.
Thank
you. Yep. Any other questions? Okay. Moving along to budget and finance. This is the time of year to talk about approving the operating budget. And I will turn over 5A through 5J to Mr. Muscatello as he will go down through each of those items.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. So in your packet, there is just a handout for 5A. So I'm actually going to skip 5A for a second and go through the next couple. And these are pretty standard, so I just want to review them with you very quickly. 5B, assessed valuation of property, is just a certification of the assessed value of the property in the district. It's a number given to us by the county. And I just want to note that the assessed value across the entire district has been decreasing over the last, when was the reassessment? 2016, I believe. And so when Clean and Green was introduced into the county, we saw significant reductions in assessed values in Cherry Hill Township and a little bit in Pine Township due to Clean and Green. And that's the reason why the assessed values have gone down since that year. The 5C is just 5C and 5D are the two per capita taxes that we assess to everyone living in the school district. Those are two $5 taxes for a total of $10. You may see those in your property tax envelopes. 5E is a realty transfer tax. It's actually a 1% tax. Half goes to the county, half goes to the school district. And that's when real estate changes hands. 5F is the earned income and net profits tax. Primarily the earned income tax is tax on earned income. And so we assess 0.75%, I'm sorry, 0.75 points on all earned income in the district. 5G is the homestead and farmstead exclusion resolution. And simply put, that is every year we are allocated a certain number of dollars from the state. You may remember that the way it was proposed was it was supposed to be the way to eliminate property taxes through the casino gambling revenue. Our total allocation is $274,000. Just so you all know, our property tax levy is $4 million. So it's the gap between actually eliminating property taxes with this homestead farmstead exclusion is quite large. So that is just spread equally over the number of homesteads and farmsteads in the district, and everybody gets the exact same amount of exclusion. 5H is the discount and penalty rate. Those are unchanged. You'll recall that for this year, when we were talking about the budget for this year, there was a discussion about changing the discount, changing the penalty, so on and so forth, extending the time to pay under face value and removing the penalty rate. We did not do that. So when I say it's unchanged, it's still a 2% discount and a 10% penalty. 5I is just simply put, we close the books at the end of June for the fiscal year. And so all I'm asking you to do is if there's any bills that we need to pay before the end of the fiscal year and before we have our next board meeting, simply just giving me the authority to do that. Same thing with 5J. If we need to make budgetary transfers prior to the start of the audit or at the end of or at the conclusion of the fiscal year, you give me the authority to do that as well. So if there aren't any questions on those standard resolutions, standard motions, I'm going to go back to the budget.
Yeah, none of those changed, correct?
None of those
Some
have
are
changed.
all- They're all the same.
They're all standard. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So if we go back to the budget, before I start digging into the details here, let me just first say, I want to thank the Budget and Finance Committee for the work that they've done on this year's budget. I actually thought last year's budget, or the year that we're in this year, was actually the most difficult budget I've ever been involved in. However, this budget was actually much more difficult. We had so many new factors that were taken into consideration in this new budget. The influx of federal funds, one-time federal funds, the understanding that earned income tax and property tax collections for this year were largely unaffected by the pandemic. So that was a new factor that was different from this year compared to this year to next year. And the property tax debate that we have on an annual basis. And so while that's not new, the sort of way that we discussed it was a little different. And so let me just remind everybody that the reason why the property tax debate was a discussion is because of the amount of federal funds that we are going to receive. And over the course of 4 years, we'll receive approximately $3.9 million in federal funds, all of which are one-time federal funds, an influx into the budget. And so when we peel all of that back, and I know I say this often, but when we peel all of that back, and when we look at the budget that we have presented to you tonight, it looks like there's a deficit of $210,000. But I remind you that in addition to that $210,000, we actually did take $200,000 of federal funds and plug them into this budget with no offsetting expenditures, meaning we simply just threw $200,000 in revenue. And so what the true deficit is that you're looking at in this budget is over $400,000. If the majority of the board decides not to raise taxes, which is the feeling that I'm getting, which is perfectly fine. If that's the decision of this board, you should know that this year's deficit is $410,000 unaddressed. Next year's deficit will be $410,000 plus whatever the budget increases for next year. And so we're looking anywhere between $600,000 and $800,000 of a deficit for next year. And deficits compound. We know that there are really primarily two ways to address deficits. You increase revenue or you decrease expenditures, okay? And so when we're talking about increasing revenues, the really one and only way that school boards have to increase revenues is through property tax. And I think, Mrs. Smiley, you actually said it best whenever we said that when you raise property taxes, the total sum that you can raise property taxes is even limited by the board. The ability to raise property taxes beyond a certain amount is limited. And so when we raise property taxes to the Act 1 index, that would have only generated between 155 and 160,000. And I say only because in comparison or relative to the deficit that we're facing, that wasn't even enough to offset the deficit. So then you look at other ways to address the deficit. The only other way that you can address deficits is by reducing expenditures. Are we going to be fine for next year? Yeah, we're going to be fine for next year. Are we going to be fine for the following year? Yeah, we're going to be fine for the following year. But the question you have to ask yourself is, in 1 or 2 years, what size deficit do you really want to sit down and address? Do you want to address a $400,000 deficit this year, an $800,000 deficit next year, a $1.2 million deficit 3 years from now, or a $1.8 million deficit 4 years from now? And the answer is nobody. You don't want to address any deficits, right? We would hope that we could operate on somewhat of a surplus or even a break-even budget. That would be awesome. But deficits in school districts compound, and we all know that the Act 1 limits the board. So if you don't raise taxes in a particular year, you don't ever get to go back. I know I say this a lot. You don't ever get to go back and get that raise ever again. It's gone forever. So not only do you lose that, but the deficits compound. So I'm only saying that because I feel it's my obligation to tell you that, and I'm sure you already all know that. But next year's deficit won't be 400,000. It will probably be closer to 700,000 to 800,000 if we don't do anything between now and then. No retirements, none of that. So it is a difficult decision to make for sure. And the budget you have in front of you is a raw budget, meaning that there are no one-time federal funds, with the exception of $200,000 taken into consideration there. So yeah, will we have a surplus of funds next year? Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. But I have an obligation to show you the real budget without one-time federal funds in it, because if I don't, then I'm not really showing you the deficit that we're facing. So what you're seeing is no property tax increase in that budget, in that handout you see in front of you. Same millage rate. So any questions?
Questions, comments on that item?
Josh, Darren, what do we do? What are the federal funds for? Everybody mentions, well, we have the federal funds. What will we use those for? How are we addressing those?
So without being entirely specific in the exact number of dollars, since the beginning of the pandemic, we have used a number of the federal funds on things that we didn't have to address the pandemic. I'll just throw out a few things: masks, shields, sanitizing and disinfecting units, gloves, protective gear for the cafeteria staff, protective gear, PPE for the cleaning staff, the 2 cleaners that we hired, those types of pandemic related expenditures. The rest of the federal funds, since we've been open every day, and since it appears as though we've addressed the pandemic here pretty well, the rest of those federal funds will be used to offset existing expenditures. Meaning, you see a budget in front of you. The goal here is to increase revenues with your federal funds and have the least amount of offsetting expenditures as you can. So we try to be practical and responsible with the money. What does that mean? That means, yeah, next year when we close the audit out for next year, there will most likely be a surplus. The reason why there will be a surplus is because we will have infused federal funds into the budget and use them to offset existing expenditures. Now, I want to make sure I caution everybody when I say this. Typically, federal funds cannot be used for that purpose. You cannot offset existing expenditures with federal funds. There's a clause when you receive federal funds that prevents you from doing that. However, they've removed that requirement or that mandate with these federal funds and have allowed us to spend them on existing expenditures. So we'll be offsetting cleaning staff, for example, offsetting the maintenance staff, for example, paying for existing expenditures, allowing us to ease our own local burden. Hence the reason why you see a budget in front of you without a property tax increase. But I caution you again in letting you know that they are one-time funds. So whenever we expend all of those funds, they're gone forever, and so we're not plugging the budget with them. We're just using them one time to offset existing expenditures.
Could you just highlight also that about $500,000 has to be spent on remediation?
So at the third
When
round,
lost.
you may hear it as the American Rescue Plan, ARP or ESSER 3. It's been all kinds of different things at this point. This is our third round of funding. We've received one early last year. We're currently utilizing another one this year, and we have yet to receive any of the money in the third round of the American Rescue Plan, which is the largest amount. Of that largest amount, 20% is required to be spent on remediation or learning programs to close the gap in education that kids we would have seen in kids because they were at home learning or because of the pandemic. We're doing that in a number of ways. We're doing that through an extended school year program. We're doing that through a summer learning program in the elementary school. We're doing that through a credit recovery program in the high school. We're using some of the funds to offset behavioral supports, and we're using some of the funds to offset our dropout prevention program that we have over at Admiral Perry. But that's $460,000 that we have to spend. And so when I say we have to spend, we've been open every day. So some school districts haven't been open every day. So that gap in knowledge may be larger than the gap we're seeing here. So that $460,000 is going towards programs, similar programs that we've offered in the past, maybe a little larger than we've offered in the past because of the amount of money that's been infused into the district. But it's a mandatory $460,000 must be spent on those programs. So we've devised a plan to offer basically what we're offering this summer, these 4 programs. We're going to offer them over the next 3 years in this fashion. We hope it will grow over the next 3 years, this summer, next summer, and the following summer is when we plan to expend that $460,000.
Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions, comments for 5A?
I personally think that the proposed millage increase, which we did not have in our proposed budget, is a necessary thing. I feel with what Josh says, we'll get rid of what was the millage? What would be?
About 160,000.
160,000 will be gone forever. And this deficit is going to be troublesome. I think what Josh has said and what I understand is we will have difficulty more so next year than this year. So personally, you hate to say it this way, but I think the prudent thing to do is have a increase. And I think since the state of Pennsylvania has made the only way for us to have funds is through property taxes, and what we are the only folks that can raise those or change those up or down. It's what we got. It's what we got. I think it's and I do believe from my talking with folks that the majority of our citizens understand that it's our responsibility as citizens of Penns Manor School District, Indiana County, state of Pennsylvania. It's our responsibility to educate our children and the best we possibly can. And that is through funds raised through taxes. Same as roads and state police and this and that, and everything we expect from our government on a state and federal level. And this just happens to be the most local level. So personally, I would advocate that we consider opening our budget and propose a millage increase to meet the state mandated top of Act 1. As Mr. Belchick said, he was against tax increases for years because we could always make it up when we hit a bad time. And we did have that increase of 13 mills or something at one time, but we can't do that anymore. We have not exceptions. We didn't qualify for any. Is that correct, Josh? Peasers,
Construction financing.
construction
special
financing, special ed. Those were the ones we always did. I feel that we have, as a district, repaired our roofs, did our renovations, and saved money on them because of our fund balance and our selling our bonds. We put the gas in that saves us money because we save money. We have to pay ourselves, meaning we have to have savings to be able to do some things. PlanCon has been shut down. For those that may or may not know, PlanCon, every 20 years, the state would help us rebuild, bring up to date, make ADA compliant, bring us up to safety standards, our buildings. That's been shut down several years. I mean, we're talking 5, 6, 8 years, something like that. So we're on our own. So I'm advocating it. I'm not putting any pressure. I'm not asking anyone else to consider it. But I am for a tax increase to the Act 1 index. I think we're going to, in essence, we're robbing Peter this year to pay Paul in the next year or the next year after that. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
I respectfully disagree. We got this additional money from the government, from the federal government, to help offset. Of course, number one thing that we have to do as a district is educate the students. But also, we do owe something to the taxpayers. And it's been a rough year for everyone. And the money has come from the federal government. And we need to use that to help offset a tax increase for the taxpayers of this district. You know, another thing is when you give these numbers and these projections, you really don't know what's going to happen next year. It could be worse, but it could be a lot better. And it usually is, because this board is very prudent at making great decisions and saving money. And there's a lot of cost saving things that are going to be going into effect possibly next year with various things that are coming up. So, and a penny saved is a penny earned. So I really feel it's not that we're going to miss out on something, or we're going to miss something that we're never going to get back. You know, going forward, we are going to have money to offset the deficit, but we're also going to do things for savings, which will also help offset any future deficits. So I honestly feel, and this is my opinion, that this year is the year that we do not have a tax increase, just to help out the taxpayers of this district. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I just want to say one thing. I'm glad you said that, Ron, about that we are prudent with our funds, because the one thing that I have heard, especially throughout this last election cycle when we had so many different candidates running for school board, we have a lot of citizens out there who don't think that we manage our budget correctly. I disagree with that. I think we've always been careful. I know that, you know, Ron, I know you've disagreed with some of the raises and stuff we get, but I'm not even really talking about that. I think that we've always been very careful about our budget, and I've always been very vigilant in making sure that our budget has always been in a good spot. A lot of people don't agree with that or don't think that, but I don't think they really know all the nuts and bolts. But that being said, I wish it would not have been put out in the media that Penn's Manor held the line on taxes, because we know it was a proposed budget that we voted, people don't understand that. They don't understand that. And so now they think that we've already decided that we're not raising taxes. And I tried to explain that to some people that that's really not the case. And I don't know if they understand that or not. That's my only thing. I wish it wouldn't have been, because the headline said Penn's Manor holds line on taxes. And that right there, I just cringed when I saw that, because, oh, I think we're kind of in a hard spot right now.
Other questions or comments?
I wonder if we had floated off and on through conversations, budget committee and full committee, full group, of perhaps splitting the Act 1 in half. Is there any desire or any wiggle room, if that's the right word, from anyone that could support half an Act 1 tax increase? Just something to think of. We will vote next week. We're going to, I think what we have to do, as we always do, we discuss things and then we vote it up or down. But keep that in your mind. Is that a possibility? If it is, let me know as budget chairman, Mr. Johnston know, or Josh as business manager know if there's any way that that could be supported. That might serve what I consider both sides, the district and our taxpayers, make it a little lighter on them, on us. We should say, right, on us. We're all taxpayers sitting in this room, except Dave there, but he has another district to go at. So just something for consideration. Thank you for your time.
Sure. So Mr. Muscatello can prepare the agenda. What I'm hearing is, though, that unless you indicate to us before Tuesday morning he'll write the motion not to include a property tax increase. But if there's others that want some halfway and doing half of the Act 1 index, please, we would need to know that by Tuesday morning. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Moving along to 5K, PSBA membership renewal. You can see that as an attachment also. So let me explain what that is. All of you receive emails, information from PSBA from the district being a membership, be a member of PSBA. In addition, please, for those of you that are new, when we do policy and policy changes, that's all coming down from PSBA to me. So I bring that to you. So that's policy also updates, any admin or regulation. We've done that all in the past. You'll also see on that sheet online training. So I just want to remind you of this. Mr. Hardesty and I, when we went over the agenda this past week, he reminded me, and he's correct, that when you become a new member of the board and also in the first year of you being a board member, you are to go through 3 hours of training. And that is a requirement now. So to create flexibility for you to go through that training, PSBA offers that online. So his recommendation, and I would have to agree with him, is to add the online training that you also see listed on there to allow every single one of you the flexibility to do it online at your own time. And then you're not contained into a certain date. I'm not sure if I don't think anyone from us, but prior to the pandemic, Aaron IU offered the first training to new board members. And that was only held once. And then as we went through the pandemic, of course, those types of things didn't happen at the IU. So our discussion has been the training is there and it's online. And it also gives every single member the flexibility. So is there anyone objecting to adding that to the membership as an addition from what we've done in the past? Okay. Moving along, next, pre-K counts comprehensive screening agreement. That is also a handout. That is from Life Steps to come and do developmental, mental health, and hearing screening. That's done 2 days. Actually, we've even already identified the days in which it will take place. Done all day. It's $350 for each day, total of $700, and that's funded by pre-K counts funds. Questions on that? Next, approve Seesaw renewal. So let me go back and remind you as we went through and putting Chromebooks in the hands of every student. We had teachers put all their coursework out on Google Classroom. In addition to Google Classroom, we've come up with 2 software or online applications that we have purchased to go along with Google Classroom. The first is Seesaw. It provides flexibility and application for teachers to design instruction for students. We had it for the entire district. This past year, elementary loved the application, got positive feedback from students and parents with Seesaw. However, at the high school level, we didn't use Seesaw so much. So you see the next one, approved CAMI renewal. So that's an application that the secondary used a lot more than elementary. So going backwards again, we're asking you to renew Seesaw renewal for elementary users, and then also CAMI for high school renewals. Anything that I should add, Mr. Gramling, to any of that? Okay. Questions on either one of those? And next, I'll go back to Mr. Muscatello and for 5O and P for medical, dental, and vision rates, and then also workers' compensation. And there's handouts for each one of those too.
Yeah, just very quickly, historically, we've approved the rates here. It's really just a informational item, I guess. The rates are locked in. The dental and vision rates have not changed in a few years. The medical rates, as we all know, go up annually. So I think the increase was 3.9% on the medical rates from this year to next year. The workers' compensation, actually, with workers' compensation, we are going to save $5,000, at least $5,000. So this year's premium is 35,209. We received a quote from this current provider, Church Mutual, UPMC Health Benefits, and Technology Insurance Trust, or AmTrust. AmTrust came in the lowest at 25,987 for our workers' comp program. I did have our current broker for our general liability insurance and our auto insurance, Walbeck Insurance, I actually had them quote the insurance as well, and he quoted it with 2 providers, and they were also higher than AmTrust. So AmTrust wanted our business, I guess. So we must be a good client for them. And for the most part, we have a really great track record here with workers' compensation. So we're an attractive client for a company to bid on. So that's why I think AmTrust did that. So my recommendation is AmTrust will save $5,000.
Mr. Muscatello, are these yearly? Do we do these yearly?
That is correct. We do that.
Do we put them out for bid, or are we required to, or is that something that
We're not required to bid services, which is what insurance is a service. What the reason why we do bid them is oftentimes with insurance, we find that especially when we use a broker like a Ruskini or a Walbeck, they can work the companies to get the rates down, and then we work each company against them to help push the rates down.
so last year we paid 34,220. Is that where we're at? I think.
Last year was so we paid 35,209, which is the first box. Then that same company quoted again for next year in 2021-22. That's the 34,220, and that's actually on the summary page.
Right.
So you said the new quote came in from another company at 25,987.
Yeah.
So that's $10,000, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, $10,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got so excited to share the news with you that I made it wrong.
See, we're already chipping away.
That's right.
We are chipping away.
And
You're
Ron,
right.
you and I are exactly right. That's what we're doing, isn't it?
Yes.
We go out for bid, we look for things, we just don't accept it. That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying
that's
too,
what
and
I was
Ron
saying
is,
too. Yes.
absolutely.
Yes. And
Yeah,
I have to say, when I
What you're saying
stepped in
also.
here 3.5 years ago, I was pleasantly surprised to see how everybody operated at doing stuff like this,
Mhm.
not just accepting.
Yeah, well,
And it helps the bottom line.
no,
does.
there's no doubt about
Yeah.
it. So Mr. Hardesty made a good point. Why do we bid a service if we don't need to bid a service? Well, we do that because we know there are opportunities out there. We know that vendors will oftentimes try to one-up other vendors just for the business.
Sure.
So we do this with just about everything in the business office. But I'll be honest with you, it happens across the district. So I know that the secretaries in the elementary school and the secretaries in the high school also do the same things when they're purchasing. And I know for a fact Dave does it when he's purchasing. You've heard him a number of times give you savings that he's found. We oftentimes call 4, 5, 6 vendors for something that's only $5,000, and there's no obligation under the PA school code or a law in Pennsylvania to bid out something that's $5,000. But I've often said to Dave that if we can save $1, we save $1. $1 is not any less important than saving 100, 100,000, or $1 million. So we save $1 whenever we can, and so we often bid out things we don't have to just for that reason.
Thank you. I'd rather go with $1 million though.
Okay, any other questions or comments under budget and finance? Okay, moving along to buildings and grounds. First, 6A, approve agreement with Perry's driveway ceiling for parking lot ceiling. As you recall, we basically go on a program where we do a section of the parking lot each year. We always set not to spend more than $7,500 on doing that. So this year, the section that would be done is basically the driveway from the district out here in front of the district office, around the corner of the elementary school parking lot down to the second driveway, and then also the parking lot out back of the high school cafeteria. So those areas would be what's being addressed. And you can see I just put there that it's for the upcoming budget that would be in. Just like to get it approved so that Mr. Dalton can start July 1 doing that type of thing. Any questions on that one?
Does that complete that program?
No, we basically just keep going in a
Going
cycle.
on?
Yep.
Keep it sealed. Okay. I
Correct.
think that's prudent.
Next, 6B, approve agreement with All American Athletics to recoat the gym floors. Again, this would come in the new budget that you'll be approving. So anytime after July 1, Mr. Dalton could have the work completed with your approval. And you can see listed in the attachment for high school gymnasium, that would be $3,200. For the elementary school gym, $3,700. And Mr. Dalton has calculated out. It is just a slight savings, and you may be saying, well, how could that be a slight savings? So Mr. Dalton takes a look at the cost of all the product, and he then takes the hours of our gentlemen that would take to complete that project. So we still are slightly saving a little bit by having All-American Athletics do that. And if you recall, that is the group that recently sanded the floor down in the gymnasium, and we switched to that new recoating.
In the high school,
Yes. Yep.
is this a yearly thing we need to do to keep it up? Is that
Yes.
what we do?
Yep. We take care of them every year.
Mhm. And you saying we've done it on our own in the past?
We have done it on our own in the past.
But it's a savings. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, moving along to 6C, approve agreement with Tom Talmadge for painting. That's exterior painting that we've done in the past, except for last year. And again, we always address the outside portions, few things inside, but mainly out. Taking care of painting outdoors. You can see that quote also, we've always capped that also at $7,500. And that will also be coming out of the upcoming budget. Any questions? Okay, next, moving along, listed under 6D, sidewalk repair. I just want you to know that in this current budget that we're sitting in prior to June 30th, we would like to address some sidewalk repair at the elementary school, capping that repair off at $10,000. And that is in the 2021 budget. So we would like to move forward and have that completed. Also, just this past week, that we would also like to add being able to put new flooring in one of the classrooms at the high school. We did not do any replacement of flooring last year because basically we weren't in the spring. But we do have a classroom that has tear in the carpet. The other ones we have been trying to cycle through, but we would like to do one room, just safety factor of the tear that's in the middle of the room. So we would like to take a look at reflooring that room. So that would be an additional motion that's on there.
We have a bid yet or?
No. So if we can get that, that will be on the agenda next week. And if not,
Does that go through the state system, bidding system? Because of
no, it'll be under.
local?
Yep, it'll be under the building. Yeah, it'll be under the bid quoting
Right.
amount.
But we still bid. We still go out.
Mr. Dalton, any comments or questions to any of those items that you wanted to give details on?
No, I think you pretty much covered everything, Mr. Johnston.
Okay. Any other questions under buildings and grounds? Okay, moving along to athletics. We do have one item under athletics, and that will be to accept the resignation of Mrs. Stair as our junior varsity girls basketball coach. So once we approve that motion next Thursday, we'll also post and advertise for that position. Any questions, comments? We will have nothing under transportation or public relations, policies, or correspondence for next Thursday. Moving along to new business, let's start out with 12A and 12B. Those are two individuals that have received their credits above their master's degree, reaching the level of master's plus 20, which is a step in the pay scale. So those individuals will have motions next week to approve their advancement. Any questions? Okay, moving along to 12C. We do have a teacher in our district that has completed 3 years with us. After 3 years, we recommend to you that the individual is tenured. So at this point, prior to the school year starting, we're asking for your approval to approve tenure for Ms. Smego. In that process, here's what has to happen. So they have to have 3 full years of satisfactory ratings in their evaluation, which she has. She's also had to, or any teacher that's in the first 3 years also has had to complete the induction plan. The induction plan consists of looking at different policies, procedures within the district, going around and visiting administration to find out what all they do, visiting every department within their building. That's all part of the induction plan. So she has completed all those in the past 3 years. So it is our recommendation that you would approve tenure for Ms. Smego. Any questions?
What does tenure bring for our,
It's just a permanent. So you offer out 2 agreements to individuals. So when you hire them, they're actually placed on a temporary contract, and it actually says it at the top. So as a temporary employee, then typically that lasts for 3 years. And again, if they meet the criteria that I just described, then they move over to an agreement that we issue and put in their personnel file as a permanent employee.
do they move on the pay scale?
That actually tenure doesn't impact them moving on the pay scale at all. So they shift and move according to credits and whether they have their instructional 1 certification or their instructional 2. So tenure is completely separate.
Thank you.
Yep. Other questions? Okay, moving along. Next, 12D, approved transfer of Annette Peach from cleaner to cafeteria worker. So this goes back to Mr. Larch's question or comment earlier in the meeting. So if you recall, just let me go backwards real briefly. So we hired 2 cleaners to work during the day this past school year. That was used with ESSER's funds again. We, in the motion, indicated at the end of this school year that both of those positions would end and we would furlough those individuals. In both cases, we will not have a motion to furlough because one of those individuals transferred to cafeteria monitor, and the posting that we have currently, Mrs. Peach has submitted a letter of interest to be transferred to the cafeteria. So if she would not have done that, absolutely, we would have had a motion, and I explained, along with Mr. Muscatello and Mr. Dalton, sat and talked with her. If she would not have done the transfer, yes, there would have been a motion for next week to furlough her. But at this point, she's going to transfer into the 4.5-hour cafeteria position. But if you recall, going back and even giving you more data, if you recall, we had a cafeteria worker that had retired. That position went from 8 hours to 4.5. So the 4.5-hour position will be filled by Mrs. Peach. Any questions, comments? Okay, moving along to 12E, approved student assistance program letter of agreement. That's also a yearly approval that we have, and that's with the Guidance Center in Indiana. That's for our behavioral support that we receive through our SAP program, or student assistance program. Mr. Hardesty always reminds me, please say all those words so we understand. I apologize. We go through day by day and we start saying letters. So if there's any time that I call something SAP or just its letters, stop me and correct me. So that's behavioral health practice that they'll come in. So there's actually 2 areas that works in our SAP. Our drug and alcohol, which is through Clarion, Armstrong, and Indiana. So that agreement will be coming to us too before August, asking for approval to work with them in collaboration. This one actually goes for mental health. So for example, we have a group of approximately 7 faculty administration that meets as a student assistance program at the high school. Any student that of concern goes to that committee. That committee then can work with someone as a member of that committee, then can have communication with a parent of that concerned student. The concern may be something that has to do with academic, and it's addressed with our faculty and staff. It could be an issue or a suspicion that we have a student that may need to be assessed for drug and alcohol. So then we go to Clarion, Armstrong, Indiana Drug and Alcohol Commission and ask that liaison to come in and do the assessment. Again, parents all have to give permission for all of this. So then the one that you're approving at this point, so that if there's a mental health concern that we have, an assessment needs to be done. That's what this particular agreement is that you're approving, allowing the outside agency to work with our SAP team. So a liaison works and comes to those SAP meetings, and referrals can be made from our committee to them. Once that's done, basically all correspondence and actions taking place through the Community Guidance Center in that particular instance. Other questions, comments? Okay, next, moving along to 12F, asking you to approve our effort in working with Aaron's Guest Teacher Consortium membership again for the upcoming year. That's a cost of $500. I just want to remind you that we advertise for substitute teachers. Substitute teachers can be certified with a certification in education, or in this particular situation, we run any individual that has a 4-year degree and is not in education can go through the guest teacher program at the Aaron IU. They go through orientation, they visit a couple schools, that type of thing. So they go through training. So the state then allows those individuals to have temporary approval to come into the school for a year to serve as substitute teachers. And again, that was another measure as districts faced the lack of substitutes was another way of getting individuals to come in and help sub. Questions, comments? Next, moving to 12G, approved donation to all 3 fire departments. I apologize that we had this discussion last month, and then I didn't have the motion put on the agenda, but just asking for your approval to go ahead, have a motion to give a $100 donation to each one of those fire departments. Any questions or comments on that? Next, higher elementary teacher. We'll talk about that in executive session here at the end of the meeting. Moving along to comprehensive planning update. Just want you to know, again, we're going through the process. So if there's anyone, we're going to form a committee to start working on that throughout the summer into the fall. If there's any board member, it would be nice to have at least 2 board members that would sit on evenings where we come together to work on the comprehensive plan. And you may be saying, well, who's in that group? Part of that group has to be members of our employee group, from board, from community, students. We would sit here as a group and go through all the requirements of comprehensive planning. So I do, at some point, I will share with that comprehensive plan committee the results of the survey that we put out, asking for the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that you also completed. We also put it out for community, students, everyone to do the same. So we'll go over those results actually in that first meeting that we have. So please email me if you're willing to sit on that committee. And again, as that committee works, we'll come to this board and share all the work that we do each month to complete that comprehensive plan. We do. We have a lot of comments. Yep. I would say the last I checked, and I keep leaving it open, the last I saw 60 responses, and it goes across students, goes across employees, community members. So yeah, a lot of good feedback.
This is a 5-year, isn't it? Every
Yes.
5 years we do it, and it's a
Absolutely.
requirement also.
It is, yes.
And there's a very structured
There is.
system. Is that
And
correct?
it has changed slightly. So the system that we'll be inputting all of our work into has changed. So, and again, that'll be my responsibility. I'll still communicate with the committee. We'll still go through the steps and the criteria. I'll be the one that inputs everything into the state. And at some point next March, April, we'll have official approval from you to go ahead and allow me to submit that into the state.
There is a deadline.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yep. About a year from now. Next, in June every year, we appoint school solicitor. So attached, you can see the agreement that Mr. Saffron has submitted, willing to serve as school solicitor again for the 2021-22 school year. And again, that is the same agreement I think that you've had with him since the beginning of him working with you. Questions, comments? Next, 12K, approve family behavioral resource agreement for 21-22. So if you recall, 2 years ago, and you've already approved the behavioral therapist agreement, which is with Ignite. So this month, we're going to ask you to approve agreement with FBR, and that is for our behavioral consultant. So in our district, we have a behavioral therapist and we have a behavioral consultant. Behavioral consultant, we are using funds that we pulled down from Access. So let me remind you of what that is. So we have staff here that work with students that need support. Those students qualify for Access. So the school district has the opportunity to apply for funding to receive Access funds, which we do. So Mrs. Rohrbaugh, Mr. Muscatello works through all of that. Funds then come back into an account that the district then can draw down funds from that. So what we've been doing the past 2 years is that's how we've been paying for the behavioral consultant. This year, what we would like to do is divide that paying for the behavioral consultant out. We would like to take Access funds to pay for 4 days of the week for the behavioral consultant. So you can see two options in that proposal that's there. We would like that individual to be here 5 days a week. 4 days a week will be paid with Access funds, and then we would like to use the ESSER funds for 1 day. So I think roughly, Mr. Muscatello told me, I think that calculates out that 15,000 would be coming from the ESSERs. The rest is coming from the Access account. Questions, comments? I don't know if you want to add anything. I apologize. Oh, my battery died.
The only thing I'll add is that 1 day that's coming is actually coming out of the $460,000 we're required to spend on learning remediation. We're going to put that into the grant. We take the stance as administration that I'm quoting Mr. Johnson here, I think, that when you behave correctly, you can learn. When you're not behaving correctly, you have a difficult time learning. So the behavior program goes hand in hand with the learning remediation, the summer camp behavior. So, right? Is that what we're?
That is correct.
Okay.
Thank you for filling in while I replace the battery.
So both of those come from funds outside of the district.
Okay,
Is that
so
correct?
correct. So, well, I can't say it's outside the district because we're providing a service to those students with need, and Access then pays us for doing those services for those particular students. So that's for those 4 days that we're talking about. And then the additional day is the ESSER's funds that we're saying, when Mr. Muscatello described that 460,000 must be spent on catching up students on learning loss, we're going to use 15,000 from those funds.
Thank you.
Yep.
I should note, though, all of that is actually one-time money, especially the learning loss money. That is one-time money, but also the Access money is one-time money. So the personal care assistants, the IAs, the teachers, the speech teachers, they all provide a service to an Access eligible student. That money is generated. It's put into a pot that doesn't sit here at the school district. We draw those funds down to pay for this. We're actually drawing more funds down than we're putting into the pot at this moment. Now we have some more funds. We have about $250,000 in funds in there, but we're pulling it down faster than we're putting it in there. So this program will not forever be able to be paid for out of this fund. It will run out eventually.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments on 12K? Okay, not moving along. 12L, approve substitute teachers for summer camp and ESY. So we have posted and advertised to our current faculty to supply everything we're doing this summer. We have determined that we're running short of individuals wanting due to vacations and things of that sort. So we're going to ask for that you approve 3 individuals that's not part of our faculty to fulfill positions that we still need. So Jenna Buterbaugh will be serving for a few weeks as ESY speech teacher. And then Laura Smith and Mara Deanna will also be working with our summer camp at the elementary school. And again, we've already posted and advertised, giving the opportunity to all of our faculty that's here. Those are just gaps that we still need to fill to make sure that we have each student's needs met. Questions or comments? Okay, if there's nothing else for open, I do just have 2 or 3 items under executive session that we need to discuss. So any comments,
Yeah,
questions?
I know Michelle's there, and I know Mr. Grimaldi's there, or not Michelle. Is Mrs. Dolges on there?
Yes.
Can anybody read that? I certainly can't.
Mrs. Zeglin.
Hello.
Okay, well, Michelle's birthday, Mrs. Dolges' birthday was the 8th. And I forgot to send the note out to everybody. I did personally send a little snippet saying happy birthday. Now, Mr. Grimaldi is really getting old tomorrow, the 11th. I know he looks young, but, well, anyway. And then Mr. Dalton, his birthday's on 6/26, the 26th of this month. So be sure to wish them all a happy birthday when you see them.
Thank you.
Other questions or
Sean.
comments for the open meeting?
You.
Other questions or comments? Okay, if not, we will be back with our business meeting next Thursday at 7 p.m.
Debbie, could you read those